the fire academy, and we donated it there, and they have our fire truck now. So that's our fire truck story. We all got started on in a fire truck. So.
Did you ever watch Kids in the Hall?
No, I can't say that I did.
Look up Kids in the Hall fire truck skit, because it's almost what you're describing. You know, it's a warped version of it, but the guy says, "Honey, I want to be a fireman." And he says, "Well, let's talk about, well, I've already made some decisions, and there's a fire truck in the driveway." And and they just go through their life with the fire truck, and like the neighbor's house catches on fire and the fire department pulls up, and he's like, "Seriously, come on, every day it's right there, you see it." You didn't call me.
That was kind of what it was. In fact, I can remember when we were going through the fire academy, it was the assistant chief that was doing the fire academy, and it was pretty well known early on that, you know, my wife and I both were in the academy, and we had a fire truck. And I remember taking him aside in one of those few early classes and says, "Okay, I'm really not a nut, okay?"
Yeah. Yeah, because you really have to open with that every time. It's like I'm not a collector either. I just happen to have a fire truck, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's like there's no way you can hide that. It's you know, you can't hide it. But no, that's a great story. That's a great story. I mean, you know, most people, you know, most people buy a pack or a medical kit or something. You build a whole truck. How many calls were you guys doing out there in a year? Like missing person?
Are you talking search and rescue or fire?
Search and rescue.
So search and rescue, oh, geez. You know, it would vary. I would say on average, ones that would actually go to a real mission,
right?
Maybe once a week, you know. The ones that were, you know, canceled halfway, you know, maybe that could get to be as much as several a week. But the ones that would turn into a real mission, that would be anywhere from once a week to once every few weeks, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and you know, and you have the SAR equivalent of smells and bells, you know, which is the ones you get calls and it doesn't turn into anything, or it resolves itself. And you know, when I started, I joined because frustration with things and just seeing things on the news, and said, rather than complain, I'll try and make a difference, and I'll do it for 6 months. And how
long ago was that?
I say 20 years. I was told the other day it was 23 years, and somebody corrected me and said, "You've been saying 20 years for the past 3 years, and you're just stuck on 20." You know, and it's like you're stuck like, "How old are you?" "I'm 44. How old are you?" You know, "No, you're not 44. You were 44 a decade ago." Like, "I'm 44. How are you?" You know, and you get stuck in that. And you know, I came to put in my, like you said, your volunteer time, and I fell in love with it. And it is a search and rescue is a vicious love-hate relationship. But long as the passion is still there, I keep coming back, and I still do care. I still learn, and I still feel that I can make a difference. But it's different than many things. And when I started, we were looking for children walkaways, and then it changed into dementia sufferers,
yep.
and then it started to take a more sinister turn, and now we're seeing far too many people where it's directly connected to substance abuse, and it's made it very difficult because everybody in that community is guarded and does not want to give out information for fear of prosecution or anything else. So it makes it, you spend 10 times the time and you get 10% the results. It's very difficult. It's changed things greatly, and we still do have standard cases, but I think we have more of an urban component than you did, because we've got big cities around, but I imagine you had a mix.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because as you were talking about more of the substance abuse, I can remember some of my last few searches involved just that. And kind of thinking back a little further, I don't remember as many of those in the past. So we were probably my career in there or my volunteer time ended probably as that started to ramp up. But I can definitely attest to there was a change over time, because back, and I'm sure you can relate to this as well, back when you first started, it was kind of when cell phones were really they weren't as popular as they are today. So you would get the wilderness searches. And then as things progress, you get less of those and more into the, less of those because people pick up the cell phone and they say, hey, I'm lost. GPS pinpoints them, the helicopter goes, it flies up, picks them up and takes them home. So over time, you kind of see that the change in types of searches or types of missions over the years.
Yeah, and there was we don't do that as much because of just the nature of environment, but there is that whole wilderness Uber component, where, and I know teams that will call a mission if the father twists his ankle and they go out and they help the family back, the mother, the father, and the 3 kids, they'll say they did 5 rescues. And I'm like, we're really fluffing the numbers here. That's not quite a rescue. It's an assist or something, but let's be realistic about our numbers. The when you did it, what was how many people did you have on your team?
I want to say, and again, we're digging into the cobwebs here. I want to say our team was 250 people.
Wow,
was what we had on our team. Now,
how many worked?
Yeah, exactly. You had your, a third of that number were the ones that you would see on every mission. Depending on the size of the mission. And that was something I think every agency struggles with, is you have a large, roster, but it's the same, for most missions, it's the same 20, 30 people that are there every time.
Right.
And that's a tough thing with any volunteer organization is you struggle with that, keeping everybody interested and keeping enough people engaged. I mean, people have work and they have jobs and it's hard, but,
I think that some people come into it for the right reasons and some people come into it for the wrong reasons. And some people shift reasons. And I think that...
Oh, I would totally agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
And I tell people all the time, as long as your reason for being here runs parallel to the mission of the organization, we will be able to get along fine. But as soon as you start to diverge from that, we gotta readjust, because we can't be doing different things. And I see, one of the things we talked about was that people join and you've got somebody who's new. And it was more difficult, I guess, when you started. And when I started, it was way more difficult to go in and NASCAR yourself up. You had to actually use paper catalogs and order stuff and wait for it and everything. There was no next day. But now I see people that join, and then the next time out, they look like they're search and rescue NASCAR. I'm like, what is all this?
I can definitely relate to that same thing. And I have to admit, I was probably one of those people. Geez, I had a fire truck. But I also would like to think that, I was as committed. There's a difference between people that just want to buy the gear versus the people that really want to put in the time and effort and make sure they have their skills and, make sure they keep their skills up to date.
Right. And that's
I don't think there's really nothing wrong with having good equipment or being able to do that, but you have to have the skills to back it up.
You have to have the skills.
And I think that's where the rub goes.
And I think the problem is that I saw people that would do it right away and they never wanted to get the stuff dirty, and I think the better people would wait and see what other people use instead of spending a lot of money. But we're all guilty of that, buying stuff, because we like to buy tools, and they're tools of the trade.
Exactly.
And I'm glad you own the fire truck thing, because had you not, a hypocrisy vortex might have opened and just swallowed in, your whole part of the town there. Because it is tough to get on a guy who buys a nice Wildland backpack when you pull up with your own fire truck.
Well, and I also think a lot of the I don't know if responsibility is the right word, but whoever is in your command staff, and I assume that would be, obviously you've been doing it long enough to be in the command staff, but I think that it's very important for people that are running these missions to be those people that are always there on every mission, go to a lot of the trainings and know all the people, because when you're making team assignments out there and you're throwing somebody out in, especially a risky is not the right word, but a situation where they could potentially be spending the night out there, or in a neighborhood that isn't maybe the safest neighborhood to be out in. You need to know the skills of the people you're sending out, and that's where your command staff really needs to be up on everybody. Of those 250 people, you need to know the skill set of every 200, all those people.
And people don't realize that. That's why I don't like the whole public volunteer thing, because you don't know the backgrounds, you don't know the limitations, and so we're doing a search, and somebody says, "Well, you're looking over it," and I might say, don't put Michael somewhere where he has to climb. He just had his shoulder looked at, and he's not going to say anything, but do not assign him anything like that,
Yes.
And you've got to be able to say that and protect people from themselves to a degree.
Which, as will rub some people the wrong way, and some people get their feelings hurt. It's like, wait a minute, I got that $200 backpack. What do you mean you can't send me over there? Kind of a thing. So being in command is a tough place to be, as I'm sure you can attest.
Oh yeah, it's the vice principal of an underfunded high school. And at best you hit some level of director of an adult daycare. Somewhere in there is where you're running at all the time, it seems.
Oh, you can't put those two on the team together because they don't get along. Those types of things you really need to be aware of. Yeah, it's always like you're seating people at a wedding, and it really shouldn't be. It really shouldn't. Yes. The what would you consider the single best thing you learned from your time doing search and rescue? Or one of them. I ran the academy for many years, and I was always trying to think of a new way to train people. And there was one thing that I was never able to we would create little scenarios to do this, but there was one thing that was always really a struggle to teach people, and that was how to deal with the stress of a situation, a real situation. And I would say one of the best things that I've ever gotten out of my whole experience there is when you roll up on something or you encounter something where there's chaos and you have to kind of assemble that and to make sense of it. I would say that's one of the things that I took away that I learned. The other big takeaway I have is we developed friendships throughout our time there of people that we we're in contact to this day, and I cherish those. I think those are probably the two things that I remember the most. It's funny you say the word chaos, because that's a word I use a lot, and I tell people all the time that our job is to help bring the semblance of order back to chaos, to not add to the chaos. Yeah, when you sadly, this country has a fair number of mass shootings, and you get that if you watch it on the news unfold. I'm not saying we ever worked one of those, we didn't, but if you watch it unfold, you see a number of victims, and then that goes up and then it goes down, and then they have one shooter and two shooters, and the news coverage think the general public perception is, why can't they get this straight? What's the problem here? And having never been in that experience where you're thrown into essentially a chaotic situation, you're getting information from 50 different sides. And it's really hard to put that into a single package. And having been there, you can look at that chaos unfold when you see it unfold on the news, and you can say, okay,